Hi, my name is Kevin Rivera, and this is my presentation for Nika Cruz's The Eyes Have It All in Get Out. Alright, so before we get started, I want to make sure that if you have not seen the movie, please do not continue with the presentation. I just personally feel like you would understand more of it, or you would get more from it if you actually watch the movie first. If not, spoilers ahead, might ruin the entire movie for you. But definitely watch the movie before you watch the presentation, and even if not, just watch the movie because it's a very good movie. Okay, so eyes within the film. In the three pictures we have Georgina, Chris, and Rose. And if we look at each different eye, they each obviously are symbolizing a different kind of struggle and even a different way of life that they are experiencing. And although there are no words within these pictures or there's any action going on because they're pictures, we can still clearly tell that there's a lot of emotions. For example, with Georgina, you can tell that she is obviously not okay. In this specific scene, she's asked if she needs anything, if she's fine, and she constantly repeats that she's okay, even though she's completely crying. And similar to Georgina, Chris, the first moment that he ever goes into the sunken place, he also begins to cry and has this whole like similar look to Georgina. And I added the picture of Rose because in this specific scene, we have Rose realizing that although she is getting strangled and is about to die, the fact that there's a police car pulling up somehow lets her know, hey, I'm gonna be okay. Furthermore, if we continue to look at other characters and the way that their eyes appear throughout the movie, we can tell that Jordan Peele uses the sense of sight to amplify imbalances of power and control, and these imbalances often drawn along racial lines. And we can clearly see this just between these three pictures because Georgina and Chris, both being African American, are clearly crying and are clearly their eyes are clearly saying that they're not okay, although their environment says they are. While Rose, who's not in a good state right now and is not okay, is literally smiling and having a good time because she knows that these police officers that are about to like come up are gonna rescue her. Okay, so photography as an extent of eyes. From the beginning, we learned that Chris is a photographer, which creates a reason for a presence of the camera within most scenes. In the scene wherever we first get to Chris's apartment, we can tell that his apartment's full of pictures he's taken. These pictures are clearly of like symbols that he feels are very important to him and his community. Additionally, the camera around his neck ends up functioning as a kind of protective shield from the strange things that are occurring around him. We can see this because every time something that's going to be weird that's happening, or every time that he feels uncomfortable, he's either looking for his camera or he has his camera with him. And as a result, we can tell that eyes aren't just an important symbol within the film, but so is the presence of cameras. And therefore, whenever Chris flashes his camera at Logan, Logan completely freaks out and ends up yelling at Chris and tells him to get out. And this is like the complete turning point of the movie. And I do believe that the camera is kind of something that helps Chris, but also ends up harming him because when we get on later to the presentation, I'll discuss like how it messes him up a bit. So one of the quotes that I picked from the article that kind of stood out to me was whenever they continue talking about the scene where Chris takes a picture of Logan and Logan freaks out. Cruz says that it was hard not to watch that scene without thinking of how important camera phones and video recordings have been for many African Americans experiencing police violence, especially in light of an earlier scene in which Chris is the apparent target of a racial profiling by an officer. Cameras get out suggest somewhat plainly have the power to reveal. So we can honestly tell that's really true not just within the movie, but in society. Every time there's a camera around, people do act different and we kind of see the reality or like what's the truth about a certain scene or a certain moment. And I do feel like the addition of that by Jordan Peele has to be really powerful because the fact that the camera flash is the one thing that frees the person from being like enslaved in their own mind is something really deep to me. Okay, so the article then talks on Jim Hudson and him appearing. So basically, whenever Chris meets Jim for the first time, he's super comfortable and he feels safe in his presence because of the fact that Jim is blind, and because of this, Chris automatically knows that like Jim can't really judge him or like be rude to him because of his skin color since he is blind, and they eventually end up bonding over art and their passion for it since Chris is a photographer and Jim is an art dealer. But sadly, Jim's true intentions are revealed towards the end of the film when we find out that all this whole time they've been like planning and auctioning Chris's body, and Jim ends up winning his body. And when asked by Chris, why us white black people, Jim responds by saying that it's not really about his like skin color or about who he looks like, but in fact it's because he says, "I want your eyes, man. I want those things you see through." And I feel like this moment has to probably be one of the not just like the most powerful one, but also the most creepiest in the film, because Jim wants to possess the way Chris views the world, and by appropriating Chris's artistic insight, Hudson, in a way, as an art dealer, would be making more profit from his new eyes, but without a regard to knowing what it really is like to be a black man in America. Another quote that I picked that comes from the article, whenever Peele is asked like how he feels about like the movie and like white the white audience watching the movie, he put that you can ask a white person to see the world through the eyes of a black person for an hour and a half. And to me, I feel like this can also be reflected towards the end of the movie, because whenever we get to like that scene, I don't know if you guys have seen the alternate version, but the original like movie, the way it's supposed to end was with Chris basically killing Rose, and then the police showing up and them actually being the police, and then the police taking him to jail, and then it flash forwards to 6 months later and Chris is in prison and he gets visited, and it's just like a completely opposite of what we saw. And like if you ever went to the movie theater and saw it in the movie theater, because in the movie theater and the real version, whenever Chris is about to like murder Rose basically, um, it's his friend that shows up, although we believe that it is a police officer just based on the lights. And I feel like that scene specifically was put in there because every single person that was in that movie theater whenever I was watching that movie had to hold their breath in, because we all knew that at that moment, if it was a police officer, Chris was basically doomed. And it was just something powerful that a filmmaker can do. But yeah, here are my sources. If you guys also want to copy and paste, I don't know if you can, but I'll like link in that YouTube video. It has like a couple like Easter eggs of the movie that you probably couldn't notice, or a couple of things that you didn't see. But definitely a good ass movie. But thank you guys. Y'all have a great rest of y'all's day.